Hey Flosstube, this is Kathleen at Snickerdoodle Stitch. Welcome. If it's your first time here, I'm glad you came to join me. And if you're returning, thanks for coming back. So this is normally a channel about cross stitch, but today is a special edition. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I have a problem with one of my floor lamps that I use to cross stitch. And somehow over the last several years, I've accumulated several lamps, and I thought I would do a quick video just reviewing each of the options and giving you some information and pros and cons that I have found using them for my stitching. And depending how long this takes, I may do some film shots of some of my quilts to show some folks that have been interested in seeing some of that as well. So I will start with the lamps, but before that, just to remind anybody who's returning or if you're new here, if you go to my previous video, which was Flosstube number 14, I have a giveaway for this Erica Michaels pattern and a piece of twill tape. I used this pattern to do the strawberry, which I gave away at Stitch New Jersey in the Smalls Exchange, and this was a small pillow that I made, which I kept myself. So it's the pattern and the twill tape. And just leave a comment on my last video, which was number 14, and put the word sewing in the comment. And I'm going to do a random picker for that on August, hang on, what's today? August 4th. Sorry, I should have looked that up beforehand. Yeah, it's August 4th. So now that that's out of the way, let me jump into the lamps, and I've got some notes here. So in my very first Flosstube, I mentioned that I actually got back into stitching in part because I discovered that with the right light, I could still see just fine to cross stitch. And so I'm going to show the light that I had then. I've since replaced it with another lamp, but I'm actually going to go back to the oldest lamp that I had. I've done a lot of different arts and crafts, heavily involved in paper crafts and stamping, which require, and jewelry making with beads, things that required having some true color matches. So this was the first, sorry, I am surrounded by floor lamps here. This was the first lamp that I had. This is an Ott Lite. It's a rather old one. It's when they still had fluorescent bulbs, and the magnifier was a separate attachment on here. I will be honest, this lamp got the job done as far as color matching. It was true color, meaning, you know how things in our old light bulbs, our old incandescent bulbs in the house actually have a yellowish cast to them, and they change the color of things. If you looked at it in sunlight, it would look different. And the Ott Lite was the first light that was marketed for true color, and they were pricey. And they used a fluorescent bulb. So I was never in love with this light, but like I said, it did get the job done as far as color matching. But it was not very bright, and I was always kind of disappointed in that. And I actually don't like having the separate magnifier, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Ott Lites are still sold. They carry them in Joann's. I think that's probably the least expensive place to get them. And they do make Ott Lites now with LED lights. They're not with the old fluorescent bulbs, so I can't really speak to the Ott Lites. I don't have any of them that are what they're selling today, but this was just my my observation of my old one. I will point out one more thing about the Ott Lite in a bit when I get through to the other magnifying light that I have. So the light that I had that really changed things for me, I bought for quilting, and they're marketed heavily at the quilt shows, and it's by the Daylight Company, which is a company out of the UK. This is actually a floor lamp, so it's got a skinny pole. And then the base is about 10 inches in diameter. It's a round nickel base. I think they make these in black too, maybe. But this is a really slim light. So the light bulb is actually this wide. I have one, they have another version, same lamp here, but instead of attaching to the floor base, it has a clamp. And I had one of these that I had bought that clamped onto my sewing machine cabinet table. It's kind of a cross between a table and a cabinet. So it clamps on and I can have it down, shining on all of my work that I'm doing in front of me on the sewing machine. And this is so skinny that it doesn't really obstruct your view or get in the way. You just get used to it being there. And it provides a lot more light than just what the sewing machine itself will provide. So I had one for that. I was moving it back and forth from the table to another table that I would use for cutting my fabric for quilting. And so then at a later quilt show, I bought the floor stand one. And this is the one that I would put over my table when I'm doing my rotary cutting for quilting. When I decided I wanted to try giving stitching again, it was because this light was so fantastic. It's true color, it is an LED, and the light is very bright. But these lamps are a little pricey, so I'll get into that in a minute. What I do like about this one, and I do still use it for my stitching, is if I'm stitching in a scroll frame and it's a longer piece, I can actually have this, I've got my scroll frame in my clamped in my stand, and I can have this lighting up over pretty much the whole scroll frame so that I can have where I'm stitching, and then I can sit the pattern right in the scroll frame on either side. So I've got the pattern right there, my stitching right there, and everything is well lit. And I love this. I normally stitch in my family room, and I've got, you know, the usual kind of family room, just I've got a floor lamp, which isn't directional. It's not made for task lighting. And then I've got a table lamp kind of thing. None of it is task lighting. So this provides nice bright light on the scroll frame for whatever I'm stitching. This is called the Slimline 3. And the whole thing weighs 7 pounds. I put all these on my scales, and you'll see why in a few minutes when I get to a later light. And this one has 1,065 lumens. So lumens tell us how bright the light actually is. We used to, back in the day, use watts, but with the advent of fluorescent and now LED lights, the watts don't really mean anything for us anymore as far as how bright the light's going to be. It's really only telling us the draw on electricity. So this is 1,065 lumens, which is very bright. You can find this light for about $150. So it's not a cheap investment, but you know, if you figure, they say the bulb will last about 15 years. So that's probably the life expectancy of the light. You know, 15 years, $150. I can afford $10 to be able to see what I'm doing really well and enjoy my craft and be able to do it. I did decide that for some stitching, especially in higher thread counts, I needed magnification. And I loved my Slimline daylight lamp, so I went to daylight first to look for an alternative that would have a magnifier on it. They have several options. I bought the Magnificent Pro, which is 600 lumens, but this is the light itself and the magnifier. So you can see, actually, let me turn it upside down. This is actually the light around here. So that's the light bulb right around your magnifier. So even though it's less lumens, it's more concentrated. So this is every bit as bright or brighter than the Slimline as far as like shining on your stitching. It does generally provide enough overspill light onto my pattern, which I often have on a stand next to me. But where I really need the light is on my fabric so that I can see the 36 count, 40 count. I haven't done much in 40 count. So I love this lamp. I did just buy it last year. It is the Magnificent Pro, as I mentioned. It also weighs about 7 pounds. And I got for $120. So I think these are a little bit more on Amazon. Daylight Company last year, between Black Friday and Christmas, had 30% off all their lamps. And so I bought this directly from them. I did mention they're a company out of the UK, but they do have a US site and they have US customer support, which I had to reach out to them about. So that was my one challenge with this light. The light again is on a round stand. Let me just separate this. The light is on a round stand, and It's 7 pounds altogether, so it's light enough you can see I can pick it up with one hand. But mine broke. So the on-off switch is right here. And this should screw in and fit securely. That creates the connection for the light. This stopped working. So I did reach out to Daylight Company, and they have excellent customer service. They got back to me on the Monday. I think I emailed them on like Saturday, so I didn't expect to hear back then. I heard back from them promptly on Monday, and they just asked me could I take a video of the problem. So that is sort of what led to this. I had to get this lamp and do some filming of it, and I thought, you know what? Let me just do a short segment about lights. What I love about this one, it is very easy to maneuver where you want it. Unfortunately, how I think I broke it was if I have this over me stitching, when I go to stand up, I would swivel it out of the way. And I'm not sure that joint is made in a way that it's going to stand up to that swiveling activity. So I need to get used to just bending this up, I think. They do have an excellent warranty, so I expect they're going to send me a new one. What else I really love about this one is this is what's over your stitching. And there really isn't anything to obstruct your work. I mean, it's really just this tiny little piece here, which is the light bulb itself and the frame for the light bulb. The magnifying glass is big enough to magnify whatever I need it to. So drawbacks on this one, really just that mine is broken. Although, like I said, thrilled with the customer service I've got so far. I'll see what happens once I film it and send it to them. My only other possible complaint is that the lens itself is plastic. The quality is fantastic. You wouldn't know it's plastic, except that I have scratched it in a couple places already. And I did just get this between Black Friday and Christmas last year. So it is just one thing to be aware of with this one, is that it is a plastic lens. So before I heard back from Daylight Company, I thought, well, at best they're going to send me a replacement, and I'm worried I'm going to have the same problem with it. So I went on Amazon and started looking for other alternatives, and I found Brightech. So I have another lamp here. The Brightech is 540 lumens, so it's very similar to Daylight. I would say the light quality and everything is comparable. It was cheaper, so it came in at $90 from Amazon. They had a coupon at the time that I used on it. When I looked today, the coupon was still there, so maybe they always have it. So this is what the Brightech lamp looks like. Again, it's one where the light is on the side here, and this is the magnifying glass in the middle. This is actually the on-off switch here. It is a glass lens, and that was part of what drew me to this one. And it is kind of nice having this part to hold on to maneuver it around. The other nice feature that this one has is that this pole for the stand is adjustable. So you could make this higher or lower depending on how you stitch and where you stitch and what height you want it to be. With the Daylight, you would have to adjust the height just by bending that crook, just by bending this. You would have to make it higher or lower, which you could do. But it is a nice feature, I think, being able to raise and lower the actual height of the pole. Two things I don't like about this one. Well, maybe three things. One, the gooseneck on this is really, it doesn't bend easily. It's a two-hand operation. You saw on the Daylight lamp, I was able to, it's very flexible to bend it and move it around. This one requires a little more work to get this, this metal, see, I can't even do it with one hand. I can, I just don't have a lot of control over it. So that's one thing I'm not crazy about, is how tough the piece is to move. Another thing, I don't really like how much framework there is, I'll say, around the lens itself. It does obstruct a lot of your fabric when you're looking at your stitching. Not a huge issue. I think it's something I would get used to. I'm just used to having the daylight, which really just has a little thin frame. So moving it is one challenge. The other challenge, the Brightech weighs 18 pounds, which doesn't sound like much unless you're trying to pick it up and move it around with one hand, and suddenly it feels like it weighs a ton. The base is very, very heavy. I'm not sure this thing doesn't weigh more than 18 pounds. I'm wondering if when I put it on the scales, I had the magnifier bent over. But despite the base weighing a ton, this top piece also must be very heavy, because if I have it, say I'm stitching, and so I have it bent over my stitching, if I go to slide it out of the way, the lamp will actually tip over. So the base itself is oval shaped, and unless the light is balanced over the long part of the oval, if you like swing it out so that it's perpendicular to the oval, the lamp will tip. Not a huge issue for me, because where I use it, I'm sitting on a love seat and I have a sofa right there, and the lamp is kind of in between the two. And if it tips over, it just tips onto the arm of the sofa. But it's not going to work for everybody. It's going to be a hassle for some people. And that was in the comments on Amazon. And other people commented that they didn't have that problem. And it probably just depends how you're using it. If you're never going to swivel it out of the way, it would be fine. It won't tip. I mean, it's very, very stable unless you do that. But so then I thought, well, maybe just bending it up is the better option, except that it's not like you can just grab it with one hand and bend it up. That's a two-handed process. And for me, it's leaning over an armchair or the arm of my love seat trying to do that. So those are my pros and cons for the Brightech lamp. Overall, I'm happy with it. I suspect when I get my replacement daylight lamp, I'll revert to using that one. The other thing, the Brightech lamp, like I said, it's heavy. It came in a big Brightech box, and then they had it packed in a cardboard box. I don't know what happened in shipping, except that this sucker is heavy, and both boxes were falling apart when they left them. I mean, the lamp itself is in two pieces. Actually, all of these lamps come in like two pieces, maybe three for the Slimline, and you just screw them together. This one came in two pieces, and they were in like the formed styrofoam. And this styrofoam was so busted up that you would have thought it was like the styrofoam peanuts in there. It just was a mess. And there is a bolt, there's a screw that goes in the bottom of the stand to actually hold this pole on. And the hardware that had a washer, the bolt screw, and this huge Allen wrench, bigger than any Allen wrench you have from IKEA furniture. It was probably like a 1/4 inch in diameter. Was missing from the box. So I contacted Brightech, and again, fantastic customer service. They emailed me back right away. In my email to them, I explained what happened, that my box was falling apart and that I was missing parts like EFG, which were the bolt to hold the lamp together. And I got a response the next day, and she said she had a replacement out to me. So I did, within a week, get the replacement hardware. It was a little tricky to get the bolt in on this one. Not impossible. It's probably a two-person operation. You almost need one person to hold the base steady so that you can line up the pole and the bolt to get them to fit together properly. But again, fantastic customer service. A few pros, a few cons to this one. And since I'm talking about lights, I do also have two halos. These are also made by Daylight Company. So many of you, let me get this out of the way so you're not stuck looking at that thing. many of you may be used to these as well for quilting or for retreats. So the Halo is a collapsible lamp. This one is electric. It's not rechargeable. I've shown it before, and you may have seen them before. So it's got the light here. The light is in this ring, and again, you've got the little magnifier glass. These lights are 315 lumens, so they're about half as bright as the big floor stand electric kind. And of course, the magnifying glass is smaller, but these are fantastic for travel. They completely collapse to this flat little thing. They only weigh a couple pounds. This one is electric, so the electric one that's not rechargeable on Amazon right now is $70. The rechargeable one is $120. And when I first went looking for a portable light, I was really thinking more of just stitching in hotel rooms, and then I'm able to plug it in. This isn't a problem. Then this year the retreat bug hit, and I've started going to retreats, and this is a problem. I've been to 4 retreats, and half of them had power available, half of them did not. You really need to count on there not being a ready source for power, especially not that you could leave something plugged in all day. You might have access to an outlet along the wall or something for recharging, but not for your only power source. So I do still use this one. Like if I'm traveling and I'm gonna stitch in a hotel, this is the one I take. The rechargeable one looks identical. It may be a skosh heavier, I'm sure, because there's some sort of battery stored in this part down here. But other than that, everything is the same size. It's the same frame. It really is identical. You would know the difference, except that the plug comes off, and the plug on this one, instead of having the the outlet for the wall, it's a USB plug. So this can go in any USB charger, or it can go in one of the little power packs. So I have the little battery power pack that I bought on Amazon for like 20 bucks. And if I go into a retreat morning with this fully charged, and I typically also fully charge my power pack, this gets me through from 8 or 9 in the morning until 11, 12 at night. Even if there's a lot of pretty steady stitching where I do have the light on, and then I just take it back to the hotel room at night and recharge them. So that's the rundown on my light saga. At this point, I've got quite the ridiculous collection of them, but like I said, the Ott Lite actually was in the basement, and some stuff that I want to unload at a yard sale. And then the Slimline, the long skinny light, that one I use for a lot of different things. That's probably a more multi-purpose kind of light, but if you need the magnifier, then either the daylight or the Brightech seem to be good options. It's just there's pros and cons to each, and you have to decide what's going to work for you and how you stitch and where you stitch. The light output of both is nearly identical, so that doesn't need to be a consideration. The price is a little different. The Brightech is slightly cheaper, but they're all an investment. So that's why I thought I would do the rundown for you, so that before you make the investment, you can decide which features and which features are most important to you and which price point you're most comfortable with, to decide which one might work for you. So hopefully that's helped anybody who's looking to buy a light, or if you've been stitching on, let's say, 14 count Ada, and you're hearing people say, you know what, with the right light, the right magnifier, anybody could stitch on 40 count linen. If you're in that group, then maybe there's a light here that will work for you. So I think now this was short enough. I'm going to do a few quick minutes with some quilts here in the room and a few other quilts. I'm going to show how I store my quilts. I will put a timestamp here so that anybody can jump forward to it. and we're probably gonna have a split in the film here so that you don't see me up dragging these lamps around. Okay, thanks for coming back. This is a quilt that you've seen before if you've watched my Flosstube. This is the quilt that hangs behind me whenever I'm filming, and it is a pattern called Village. Sorry, I'm moving around so much. This is the pattern. It's from Miss Rosie's Quilt Company, and it is actually a free download on Fat Quarter Shop right now. So run and get it. I don't know how long it's been free there, and I don't know how long it will be free there, but it's a free download. So to hang my quilts, you'll see this again with another quilt I'm going to show you later. I actually use a curtain rod. That's a really big curtain rod, like the kind you would get to hang a curtain, you know, on a big living room window. And then those rings with the clips, the cheapest place to get those is IKEA. I do have some from Amazon too. So Amazon is another option if you don't have an IKEA nearby. That curtain rod and clips actually came from IKEA, and they are hung as close up to the ceiling as I could get. And that is because that quilt hangs all the way down to the bed over here. So the quilt pattern actually calls for one more row of houses, but I didn't want it going behind the bed. I knew when I made this quilt, this is where I was going to hang it. This is actually my home office. So if we looked over to the right, it's my desk and my dual monitors and all of my equipment for my corporate job that I do here. And I'm in this room 45 to 50 hours a week. And I wanted something bright and cheery. And now on conference calls, since everybody is now using cameras on conference calls, that is what people see behind me when I'm on my calls, is that quilt there. So I'm going to walk up closer to it now so you can see the house is up a little closer. Every house door is fussy cut with a cat or a mouse in the door, and no two are the same. So it's like 136 or something like that houses, and every cat and mouse is different, and actually every house and roof combination is different. The pattern's designed to use charm packs. I think like 3 or 4 charm packs would make a quilt. This is well, it was charm packs. I think it was more than 3 or 4 though, because I was picky about the colors that I pulled, and yeah, just my quirks. But yeah, I quilted it myself. I quilt all of my quilts myself. This one I just did some straight lines going horizontally. I thought that reminded me of siding. And I have it bound with some straight binding. I really like straight binding. The back is a different city scene, and if I can get to it, sorry, I'm gonna make you dizzy here. I'm not sure I can get to it hanging on the wall. There we go. There is a ginormous house in the middle of the back, and it has a bigger cat that wouldn't fit in the door on the front. So I used the same concept, but did a great big huge house that's smack in the middle of the back of the quilt. So this hangs here every day. And then you've seen, I've had people ask me about the quilt that's on the bed. This quilt is from a pattern called Victory Garden. This is the pattern. It is by Busy Bee Quilt Designs. And it, of course, is inspired by the British flag. It's not true to the British flag. These pieces are not exactly right. There's something that is like off on them from what the British flag would be. But this is a great quilt to use up some yardage. You take 15, the pattern calls for 15 5/8, but what you really need are 15 true half yards of fabric. So if your fabric is not cut on grain and you have to trim it off to square it up, after it's squared up, you need a half yard. So I'm sure that's why the pattern calls for 5/8. Most of the fabric stores where I shop are pretty generous when they're cutting, so they tend to give you a few extra inches on the half yard. So I actually used half yards for this, and I worked out fine. I remember there was one fabric I had to fudge a tiny bit because I had a half yard but it worked out. But what you do is you take the 15 fabrics and you sort them into 5 piles of 3. So for example, this block, I chose this blue, yellow, and red. And you'll see here the red is in the middle and the yellow is the skinny part. If I look back here, this is the same combo of 3, but here the red is skinny part and the yellow is the big part. And then if I move over here, this is the 3rd block, and now we've got yellow in the middle and red here. So it just, with the 3 fabrics in each block, it will end up in one of these 3 places. And then in the next block, it would be in a different one. And then in the 3rd block, the 3rd one. So it makes a full twin size quilt. It's like 73 by 91 inches. And you could get all of the blocks easily done in a day. You know, a good, I'd say 6 hours of cutting and piecing. And then it pieces together pretty quickly just with the sashing and the cornerstones. So that is Victory Garden. And then on my floor here, you can't normally see this when I'm filming, that is a jelly roll rug. They were all the rage a few years ago. I don't know how popular they are now. I've gotten a little distracted with cross stitch and haven't been quilting as much, but I love doing jelly roll rugs. They do take about a day to make, a full day, like 8 or 9 hours. And they do use a full jelly roll. So with the prices of jelly rolls right now, it's not a cheap rug. But they are super fun to make. They hold up well, they wash well. I wouldn't use them at the front door where people are gonna come in muddy shoes or get a lot of traffic. But here in my office, it's something again to make it bright and cheery in here and make this my happy place when I have to be doing my corporate job all day. So I'm going to pause now and I'm going to move us to another room. One more thing before I leave this room. This is the far corner. I'm normally facing this when I'm filming. This is how I store most of my quilts. I have 2 baskets like this. So those are just in the like hamper section at Marshall's. And it's just a metal basket which has the fabric lining, which is really nice because it keeps the bottoms of my quilts from getting dust bunnies or cat hair or anything on the bottom there. And I just have the quilts wrapped around pool noodles. So I just roll them around. Here's one that's sliding out. These pool noodles that you can get this time of year for a couple bucks. Used to be able to get them at Dollar Tree for $1, but I think they're probably a couple dollars now. I know Five Below often has them, and I'm sure Walmart or lots of places have them. But by wrapping the quilts around that and just tying it with a piece of fabric, 1, it looks cute. I don't really have anywhere else to store them. And 2, if you fold your quilts, you can get creases in them. It's the batting that creases, so it's really hard to get the creases out once you get them in there. And by rolling them like this, I avoid any creases. And then behind that, those are fat quarters stored in CD towers from IKEA, which I don't know if they make anymore. They discontinued them, then they brought them back, and now I have no idea. Nobody really buys CDs anymore. So I'm gonna guess they may have discontinued them, but it might be the kind of thing you could find at a thrift store, is any kind of CD tower. They're the perfect size for storing fat quarters, and they look all pretty and cheery there too. So now I'm going to stop and go to a different room. Okay, just a couple more quilts. This one you won't have seen yet. I'm just now getting it out to rotate it for summer. I'm a little late. This apple quilt is actually made from this mini pumpkins quilt by Cluck Sew. She makes a pattern which does a larger one, and I had done the larger pumpkins and had so much fun doing it that I wanted to do a smaller one, but I didn't need 2 pumpkin quilts. And as I looked at this one, I realized as long as I avoided these tall skinny pumpkins and just went with the short fat ones like these 2 and that one in the far corner, that they would look like apples. So I used red colors for apples. I do have lots of red in my stash. You can tell from my quilts that I do like bright colors. I have red in my dining room, my kitchen, and of course in my office, which you've seen. And so this is my apple quilt with my red apples and my one Granny Smith in there. So a lot of fun. This one again, I quilted on my on my home machine. I just used a wavy line, and I've got the striped binding on again, only this one I did play around with putting some rickrack in the binding. So that was a lot of fun. I had the rickrack and I had been dying to try that technique, and this quilt was small enough that I could do that. So I put the rickrack on the binding on this one. And this one usually is on my dining room table, which I'm not going to show you because it has a bunch of stuff on it right now. And then if I move up right here, this you may have seen on my thumbnails or other places. I often use this cabinet for photographing with the Life is Good in the background. But this is, the quilt pattern is Canning Season, and it's from It's So Emma. So it is available on Fat Quarter Shop. I think It's So Emma is actually their brand or affiliated with them. Or you can buy it at your local quilt store if they carry It's So Emma. And then you'll notice on here that it does not say Life is Good at the bottom. For me, let me see if I can back this up a tiny bit. I have this wall here, and I often have quilts hanging here. I mean, I always do, but I swap them out. And I knew that's where I wanted to hang this quilt. I was loving this quilt as I made it. And so I added this extra piece at the bottom. And I just freehanded Life is Good, blew it up on the copier machine, and then traced it onto the fabric so that I could do the hand embroidery to put the words on there so that I could make this longer. And this is one of my favorite quilts. This pattern is very easy. This is an easy one-day piecing job. These points are really the only thing to match up. Well, there's some points here, and I didn't do great on matching some of them. It's a pretty simple, forgiving, fast pattern. And then you can see I do have this one also hanging using a curtain rod, which appears to have gotten scooched over crooked, but this one is a cheap curtain rod from Big Lots, and then the clips again came from IKEA for this one. I like using the clips. It makes it really easy to take down and put up a different quilt or to take them down for cleaning. I have not found the clips to damage any quilts, not to even really leave crimp marks or anything. It distributes the weight really evenly where it's hanging, so it doesn't damage the quilt and makes it hanging very easy. I have some quilts that are slightly wider that I hang here, like my one with Christmas trees in the winter, and so at that point I just take a couple of the clips and slide them further over so that I've got clips supporting the weight on the sides of both sides. So that's just a little bit of my quilting, and I will share more in the future. But next video I will be back with cross stitch, lots of cross stitch, maybe a little bit of haul. I'm not supposed to be shopping, but yeah, we know how that goes. So everybody have a fantastic week and enjoy your stitching. Bye.